If you haven't been living under a rock for the last 10 years, you are most likely familiar with the YouTube content creator PewDiePie. Felix Kjellberg, as he is known outside of YouTube, started his channel in 2010, making Minecraft videos and screaming at horror games, and has since then become the second biggest creator on the platform, with over 100 million subscribers to date. During his career, he has been in the center of quite a few scandals, ranging from anti-Semitic jokes to spouting racial slurs during streaming sessions. His use of sexist, anti-Semitic, and racist language has garnered him a sizable following of far-right people embracing his actions. A neo-Nazi website, the Daily Stormer, even called themselves the world's #1 PewDiePie fan site for a while. And even though Felix has made statements denouncing his behavior, the website concluded that his honest views doesn't really matter, stating that the effect is the same, it normalizes Nazism and marginalizes our enemies. This all culminated when in March of 2019, Felix was associated with the New Zealand mosque shootings, where a gunman, live streaming his deed, urged viewers to subscribe to PewDiePie before killing over 40 people. Felix did of course distance himself from the shooter in a tweet shortly thereafter. If you were hoping that this video would discuss whether or not Felix is a Nazi, we must sadly disappoint you. We frankly do not find that question very interesting at all, and to be honest, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. He has an enormous following consisting of rather young people, and his behavior, what he says and how he tackles these issues, does have an impact no matter his true intentions or beliefs. Taking his huge following into consideration, and how he has been embraced as a gateway into far-right ideology, we find it quite troubling to see him repeatedly stumble to address this problem satisfyingly. His apologies often ring hollow, based on how he frames the critique levied at him as stupid jokes, blaming media for reporting on the things that he says and does.
It's over for PewDiePie. Poopsie. Doopsie doopsie.
With such a huge audience, you have to be mindful of your own behavior and the way you speak, not to put harmful ideas out there for all to see. Which brings us to one of his latest videos, where we find him doing just that. On the 7th of November, Felix released a video under the title "The Brofist is declared a hate symbol", a rather misleading title considering the Brofist is not brought up even once during the entirety of the video. He instead goes on to lament how certain other characters and gestures have been dubbed hate symbols in recent years, after being adopted by neo-Nazis. He does not, however, put the blame on Nazis themselves, but rather on overly sensitive people who are implied to be stupid for being tricked into believing these symbols mean something that they in his eyes clearly do not. The problem is that Felix does not seem to understand how symbols work, or at least his video is quite unfocused, to the point it obscures whatever it is he wanted to say. And he is rather disingenuous too about the things that he presents, and of course, the details he leaves out. Just take a look at the first few seconds of the video, as they are quite representative of this issue. He simply asks which one of these symbols are considered a hate symbol, which in the end is revealed to be
all of them.
He frames this conclusion as absurd. It is clearly meant to be taken as a joke. Like, how the flying fuck could anyone believe that the number 12 is a hate symbol? Or the bowl cut? Dude, what the fuck? Felix does, however, conveniently never give any more context to the first two symbols, or even why anyone would even consider them to possibly be used for spreading hate. And if you did not already know, let's explain them quickly. The bowl cut is used as a reference to white supremacist Dylann Roof, who in 2015 killed 9 black Americans in the Charleston Church, South Carolina. He has since then been promoted by young white supremacists as a hero and a saint for the movement. The number 12, on the other hand, is a symbol for the Aryan Brotherhood. Like with many other white supremacist dog whistles, numbers are used to substitute letters. In this case, 1 and 2 equals A and B in the alphabet. Felix then goes on to talk about the internet meme Pepe the Frog, and how he went from being a fun-loving dude into a symbol of hate, anti-Semitism, and racism. He does, however, never describe the hate in more detail than that, and he makes it sound a bit like this was all just an attempt to troll people. He uses mild words like bad intentions and positivity without genuinely pointing out how neo-Nazis co-opted Pepe to do real harm. In much the same way, he talks about the OK hand symbol as if it was just another trolling attempt that fooled people into believing that it meant something that it to normal people obviously doesn't. People were, according to Felix, tricked by these rascal 4chaners into believing that the innocent OK hand symbol meant white power, when in reality it is just a thing you do with your hand, man. This is just how Felix frames it, but we know better than this, of course. So let's talk about symbols in the most basic way possible so that everyone in class, including Felix, gets it. And I'm talking real basic, like social psychology 101 stuff. So, a symbol is something that refers to or stands for something else and is used to convey meaning. It can be gestures, objects, or even words. The gesture of waving to someone is a symbol, and we use it to communicate something, generally a form of greeting. And for example, the word spoon is a symbol used to describe the implement that we use to eat soup with. It is important to note though that symbols do not have inherent meaning on their own. They do not just come from nature and are entirely socially constructed by us. Symbols therefore mean what we decide they mean. A symbol can even mean several different things in one situation, making it possible for people to interpret them differently. An engagement ring might, for example, be interpreted as a sign of devotion by one person and a significant loss of freedom by the other. And this is generally how many hate symbols are specifically intended to work. The swastika is a great example of this, as it has had several meanings in different cultures before the Second World War. These symbols are also often appropriated and given new meaning for the purposes of muddying the water, creating confusion, and to pass by people who are not already in the know. We tend to call these kinds of symbols dog whistles, as they are meant to only be understood by the members of the in-group, just like how literal dog whistles can only be heard by dogs. Using already established symbols and giving them new meaning is rather effective, as it makes it easy to use them, deny involvement with the group, and then slither away into the masses who do not understand the dog whistle. If you're lucky, the masses will even stand up for you, pushing back against those who point out what you're actually up to, which Felix is pretty much doing in this video coincidentally. The OK hand sign is in fact great in this regard, since it is inconspicuous enough and widely used in other contexts. It can be used to leave people unsure about your intentions or even oblivious to them. Felix does not seem to acknowledge this, as he keeps making this false dichotomy between people who like to demonize others and those who like to troll. He is basically framing this as a conflict between innocent jokesters and those who in turn want to make them out to be evil. He bases this on the alleged fact that the gesture started off as a way of trolling, which is not even entirely true, but let's pretend that it is. The origin does not actually matter much. When neo-Nazis start to appropriate symbols like the OK hand sign to express hate, it has unavoidably taken on new meaning. That is just the truth of the matter. It does not, of course, mean that you can never use the OK hand sign ever again. Context is important. But at some point, trolling, triggering the libs, or ironic neo-Nazism becomes effectively indistinguishable from the real deal. Then it's not just a joke anymore. Your alleged fake hate symbol has become a real one. As we stated before, symbols mean what we make them to mean. And Felix is so close to actually getting it when he mentions how the swastika, like we did, used to mean something else.
I keep saying the argument that, well, the swastika was taken by the Nazis, so symbols do change meaning, like it used to mean the sun or whatever.
But then quickly pivots into the argument that the neo-Nazis using the OK hand sign is everyone else's fault because we, quote-unquote, gave it to them.
But of course they're gonna use it. Unlike other hate symbols, this was given to them. Stop making it so easy for these people.
No, I'm sorry. That is not the case at all. That is not actually how this works, my dude. It was appropriated, which literally means to take possession of something without permission. They took a symbol and made it mean something else. What we find most egregious about this video, however, is when Felix goes on to say that not all people are aware that it has been co-opted, which yeah, that's the point of a dog whistle, and then finishes with the assertion that no one should know these things.
And they shouldn't. No one should know these things.
And this, friends, is a genuinely harmful idea being spouted from this little Swedish boy's mouth right here. Being ignorant about how people use hate symbols is not a solution. Even if you think that the media is overstepping or that people are being falsely accused of being Nazis, this is not a solution. And on top of all that, advocating this to your huge fan base, framing it all as one big joke, while you contradict yourself and disingenuously portray the situation, is simply naive and irresponsible. The way he smugly laughs about it, how he implies some people can't be Nazis, and how he deflects over and over again, sends a message. And sadly, he's playing defense for neo-Nazis, whether it be consciously or not. We began this video by giving a short history on Felix's previous scandals, because with all that in hindsight, one could assume that he would maybe learn from it and try a little harder. We don't really want to say this because there are some bad actors who are most likely going to misinterpret this. But we think it says a lot about why Felix himself should be one of the people who actually take this to heart the most. That he, of all people, should know that he has to communicate better. The mass murderer who used his name flashed the OK hand symbol during his trial. Something that Felix, for some reason, failed to mention during his own video about said symbol. Now this is of course not to say that he is responsible for this horrible attack. However, he does have some responsibility when it comes to what he says and does in front of his audience. At the time of writing, this video has over 5 million views. That is a lot of eyes and ears on a false and misleading narrative. No one of us can probably even imagine the pressure of having that many people watching whatever it is we are doing. But when you are broadcasting to so many people, you simply can't afford to be naive and irresponsible. What you say matters. What you do matters. You simply have to do better.
Thanks for watching the video all the way through. This is our third video, and there's more where that came from, but there will be even more where that came from if you pay us. So I don't have to go to work, so I can stay at home and make videos. If you become a Patreon, I will read out your name like Sweet Pink and Nocturno. Hopefully next time we will have at least one more name there.
Maybe.
Please.
Anyway, thanks.
Woo!
Wow.